Book 1. Chapter 1. Enter the Dragon. I was born in 1964, in a small but historical town called Taiping in the state of Perak, which is in West Malaysia. My father was a personnel of the Malayan Railways, and my mother was a dutiful and loving housewife. Childhood days still linger in my memory vividly, as those were the wonderful days that cannot be forgotten. Since my father was a Malayan Railways personnel, he was stationed in Singapore from 1960 to 1965. I was about to be born in 1964, and since all our relatives lived in Taiping, he sent my mum back to Taiping for maternity delivery. 1964, according to the Chinese zodiac, was the year of the dragon. Most Chinese loved to have their kids born in this year, as the dragon was a mythical creature that symbolized power, strength, and good luck. Maybe due to that, I was a hefty and chubby baby weighing 7 pounds. Or, maybe my mum must have eaten well and thus the size. I had big round brown eyes, a chubby cute face with curly black locks. One look at me, and everyone thought I was a baby girl. No one passed by me, without admiring me or playing with me. My mum used to say that the lady next to her bed in the maternity ward had delivered a baby boy, after many years without children. But it seemed that the lady and her hubby would always stop by my baby cot, and admired my extreme cuteness. My mum was a diabetic, when she delivered me. Since I was a 7-pounder, they had to do a cesarean operation to get me out. The scar from the C-sec didn't heal well, and thus, I went home first, and my mum stayed back to get more treatments. My grandma's house had lots of people staying, like my unmarried uncles and aunts. One look at me, and they fell in love with me. Each of them took turns to take care of me, and brought me daily to visit my mum in the hospital. Ha ha ha. I must have been the first baby in history to go and visit his mum in the hospital. Since I was being taken care of by my aunts, they would be feeding me every time they saw me. Maybe it was my cute looks and chubby face that made them think that I wasn't fed. Thus, I ended being even more chubby by the time my mum came home 1 month later. Life as a baby had no worries. Food came on time and love was all around. Being extremely chubby and oozing with cuteness, I was dressed up like a baby doll. With my black curly locks and big brown eyes, I melted everyone's hearts. Everywhere I was taken, everyone stopped to look at me and pinched my chubby cheeks. After I was born, my dad got a transfer back to Taiping. Thus, we spent our days there until 1969. My dad used to say that I was his lucky charm. This was because, only after my birth, he got a promotion, pay increment, and the family stabilized. Oh. By the way, did I mention that I had an elder sister and brother? The age gap between my sister and I was 11 years. So, in every picture taken with me, I looked like a cute baby doll in her hands. Plus, I think my mum wanted a girl and it turned up to be a boy. Thus, she always dressed me looking like a baby doll. Soon, one by one, my uncles and aunts got married. My grandma's house was filled with lots of people. Since I was the only baby there at that time, all treasured me very much. I got the best of everything from clothing, food, and especially chocolates. In the late 60s, Cadbury and Van Houten were the most famous and delicious chocolates that anyone could ask for. I am sure all of you would have guessed by now, from where I got all these fads. Book 1. Chapter 2. Memories of Childhood. One by one, my uncles and aunts started to raise their own families, and moved out of my grandma's house. Thus, left with only my family, my grandma, and my youngest auntie and uncle, who were still schooling. My aunt's favorite pastime after school was doing embroidery on saris with beads and sequins. I became her little helper in gathering the beads and sequins. Maybe, due to this, I was a very creative and crafty kid in school. After completing a sorry assignment, she would make a sale out of it to the neighbors and friends. From the money she earned, she would give me a treat of ice kacang, shaved ice with yummy syrup and filled with goodies like grass jelly, red beans, sweet corn, and seasonal fruits, and chendol, shaved ice with palm sugar, green jelly, and steamed glutinous rice. I was her favorite pet as she treated me like her younger brother. Thus, I too always addressed her as sister. Ha 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 ha, for some time, I really thought that she was my sister because she and my own sister were just born a few years apart. In the old days, it was quite common to find aunties, uncles, nephews, and nieces around the same age. My aunt was the whole world to me. We had an orphan living in with us, who took care of my grandma's house and needs. She was my best buddy, and we always climbed the rambutan trees to pick the juicy and luscious fruits. Not forgetting the guava and mango tree too. My grandma's house was huge, and had at least 6 bedrooms. Surrounding it had a lot of land space, and thus the cultivation of these seasonal tropical fruit trees. Soon, we too moved out of my grandma's house, but we were just a walking distance away only. Daily, my best buddy would come and bring me over to my grandma's house. I would spend the entire day there, until my dad picked me up after work. What I liked most about walking over to my grandma's house, were the row of provision shops in between. My buddy would always buy me snacks to eat, and I would share it with her gladly. It was time to go to nursery school. My aunt had completed her high school education by then and was working there as a teacher. Thus, my parents gained me admission there. In fact, it was quite near my grandma's house too. To add to the joy, my other cousin from my mom's side was studying there too. Going to nursery school was a fun time. With my auntie and cousin there, it felt like I was at home. We even had cooking sessions, with the guidance of the teachers. Thus, maybe this was what made me to like cooking and baking. Life was going on smoothly, until my dad got a transfer and promotion back to Singapore in 1969. I was filled with tears as we were moving. I was going to miss everyone I loved in Taiping. My dad had promised me that, every school holidays, he would send me back to be with my loved ones. The day came for our departure. We were at the Taiping railway station, the first area where railway tracks were laid in Malaysia's history. As a child, my heart was torn. I was crying profusely, whenever the thought crossed my mind, that I would not see my loved ones in Taiping for at least 6 months. After hugging, kissing, and receiving a lot of gifts, I boarded the train with a sad, heavy heart. I never talked to anyone throughout the whole journey, except maybe to eat my snacks and food. Seated in the train, were my dad, mom, and brother. My sister did not follow us as she was about to complete her high school education, and my dad did not want to disrupt her studies. My first taste of being a born loser came at an early age. It came in 1964 when I was born. In 1964, Singapore and Malaysia were united as one. Only in 1965, they separated themselves as individual countries. Those who were born in Singapore in 1964 or earlier, were made Singapore citizens by birth. Just my luck, that my dad had to send my mum back to Taiping for maternity delivery. Thus, causing me to taste the first bitterness of being a born loser. Book 1. Chapter 3. Setting foot in Singapore. When we reached Singapore, it was a brand new experience for me in 1969. Singapore was starting to become developed and everywhere you turned were flats. Compared to the private properties in Malaysia, Singapore was a concrete jungle. But amidst this concrete jungle, we still had kampong houses, villages. Since my dad was in the Malayan Railways, all staff along with their family were given accommodation in Malayan Railway quarters. It was situated at Kampong Baru Road, which was and is still located near Bukit Merah. All the flats in the railway quarters were named after each of the states in West Malaysia. I don't know if it was a coincidence or planned, we got a flat in the block named Perak. My chubbiness came along with me to Singapore and it was slowly turning into obesity. Since I was the youngest in the family, they took care of me very well by feeding me with 5 meals a day. I was only 7 at that time, but my size made me look at least 10 years old. Everything from pants to shirts was always large in size. On my first day at Lut Primary School, my dad brought me to my primary 1 classroom. I still remember distinctly my class teacher telling my dad that I was in the wrong classroom and directed us to primary 3. My dad and I went around the whole school and finally got directed back to the same primary 1 classroom. My class teacher's first remark was, "What a big chubby boy." Well, that was my gradual climb to obesity. As the years went by, I got even bigger in size, as eating was my favorite pastime. My brother and I were in the same primary school. He was a diligent student and always scored straight A's in all his subjects. This included Malay, which we took as a second language as we were Malaysians. My dad did this because he was not sure where his next posting would be, and we might have to go back to Malaysia. Another wrong move made by my dad. If he had made me study Tamil or Mandarin, I would have been someone in Singapore by now. This was my second taste of being a born loser. Book 1. Chapter 4. Sibling Rivalry and Enduring Singapore's Education Rat Race. It was always a competition between my brother and I. He was diligent and hard-working, and I was playful and smart-working. Thus, my parents treasured him too much and gave in to all his whims and fancies. Whatever he said was gospel truth for both of them, as he was a smart straight-A student. He did extremely well in PSLE, primary school leaving exam, and got a place in Raffles Institution, the top boys' school in Singapore in the 70s. This made my parents so proud, and it was a proven fact that anyone entering Raffles Institution would one day graduate out of National University of Singapore. Well, that was very true in my brother's case. I, on the other hand, was just an average kid getting A's and B's in primary school. Always there were comparisons and scoldings for not being like my brother. There were times when I failed a subject and my dad would give me a good whipping. My dad was actually a loving father. After all that whipping, he would sit me down on his lap and advise me to study harder. Better still, he would bring only me out to the cinema to watch a movie, and I always ended up with a big bar of Cadbury in my hands. Due to my brother's diligence, he always got the best of everything from my dad. The best stationery set, the most expensive Parker pens and geometry boxes. All I got was hand-me-downs from my brother, as I was an average student only. Although we lived in a flat, surrounding us were little villages. There were so many people to play with, and my most favorite friends were from an Eurasian family. They had 2 kids around my age. Plus, they made the best fruitcakes and cookies. I was always first in their list to taste it. Well, maybe that's why I grew a loving for fruitcakes and ended up baking them as my hobby. The Eurasian family had a chicken cum duck farm behind the flat. Plus, there were many guavas, mango, and rambutan trees. Actually, behind the flat was an open land, and every household took their share and planted trees or reared farm animals. Most probably we were the only ones who didn't do anything, as my father was allergic to animals. It was my turn to do PSLE, and to my own surprise, I did quite well and got all A's. This got me a seat into Anderson Secondary School, which was also one of the top schools in Singapore in the 70s.